Greetings to each and everyone. I am Karina May Patiluna, and on behalf of my group mates, Mr. Daryl Lambo and Miss Mamela Toledo, I would like to all humbly welcome you in Lesson 6, focusing about the things to consider in planning instruction. And in this chapter, we will together learn in 6 things: content, objectives, classroom environment, materials, students, and teacher, because all of these are crucial in planning for effective instruction.
Content. One of the primary elements that should be considered in instructional planning is the content. Basically, teachers need to know what they will teach in order to effectively prepare their lessons. Two types of knowledge: declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge. What is declarative knowledge? It entails knowing about something, while procedural knowledge is knowing how to do something. In other words, declarative knowledge comes in the form of facts, concepts, and generalization. What is procedural knowledge? Is in the form of skills and knowing how to do something. Examples of declarative and procedural knowledge. In a geography class, identifying the elements of a map is example of declarative knowledge, while determining the absolute location of the Philippines on the world map is an example of procedural knowledge. In history, knowing the significant heroes and events in the Philippines Revolution is example of declarative knowledge, while critically analyzing primary sources from this period is exercise of procedural knowledge. In the Philippines, many educators believe that social studies is a content-heavy course, thus the tendency to emphasize declarative knowledge and prioritize rote memorization of people, places, events, and other details in instruction and assessment. This should not be the case at present, especially that the K-12 curriculum framework for social studies also highlights procedural knowledge in the form of critical competencies and skills. The table shows examples of such competencies and skills. It is important to develop these high levels of procedural knowledge in all our students to ensure that we will produce learners equipped with 21st century. Objectives. An objective is a specific statement of a learning outcome. It describes what we want our students to do and how we will know if they are already there. Taking into account the objectives of the lesson is important because this is vital in assessing students' learning and evaluating the effectiveness of instructions. In the K-12 curriculum guide, statements of learning outcomes expressed through standards and competencies. Standards are more general outcomes as statements that can be achieved in weeks, quarters, year, or years. The table shows examples of different levels of standards in the social studies curriculum. On the other hand, competency are more specific and can be achieved in a shorter period of time, probably in a day or in a week. The learner competency in a quarter are consistent with the content and performance standard. Teacher can directly lift this competency as their unit or lesson objectives. An example of this is Grade 2, Quarter 1, Competency 1.1, nasasabi ang payak na kahulugan ng komunidad. They also have an option to develop their own objectives based on the competency. An example of this is Grade 2, Quarter 2, Competency 11. Nasusuri ang kahalagahan ng mga pagdiriwang at tradisyon ng nagbubuklod ng mga tao sa pag-unlad ng sariling komunidad. This can be broken down into more specific objectives. Nasasabi ang mga pagdiriwang at tradisyon na ginagawa ng mga tao sa sariling komunidad. And number 2, na ipaliwanag ang kahalagahan ng mga pagdiriwang at tradisyon sa pag-unlad ng komunidad. While teachers have the liberty to develop objectives, they should ensure that these are consistent with these standards and competencies. In formulating instructional objectives, Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive domain is 100 references designed by Benjamin Bloom, and his college is present in hierarchical ordering of intellectual skills, from the basic recall of facts to high-level processing of information. In planning social studies instruction, teachers should place importance in developing students' higher-order thinking skills represented by the upper 3 categories in Bloom's taxonomy. One of the major criticisms of social studies education in the Philippines is it emphasizes in factual recall and rote memorization, which are considered lower-order thinking skills. To counter this, teachers should ensure that they incorporate analysis, evaluation, and creation objectives and activities in their instructions to produce critical and creative learners.
Moving on to classroom environment. Students learn more when there is a positive classroom environment, the reason why teachers should also take into account in instructional planning. So we have first, ensure to have a welcoming and stimulating classroom, one where students feel regarded and represented and at the same time excited to learn new things. This is very crucial because as teachers, one of our main goals is to provide a conducive learning environment for our students where they can comfortably learn, venture in things, and also where they can feel they all belong. Second, must foster a healthy social environment where students interact with each other and no child is excluded. Like what I have said earlier, always promote inclusive learning environment for the learners, just like what the main objective of sustainable development goals in having quality education is to have the rule, no child left behind. How could this be done? So in terms of social environment, teachers can form collaborative groups, devising setting arrangements, implementing buddy system, or where students have the freedom to choose their friend as their partner in some activities, and lastly is to plan group activities. A positive emotional environment shall also be promoted by instilling respect towards each other. Definitely. Students should be taught to be sensitive to the needs of their classmates, and teachers should also model such behavior to their students. As much as we teach our students on the subject, content, and matter, values must be also introduced and implemented inside the classroom. Being sensitive in each other's differences may be in physical or mental aspects or even in life status, and among others. However, we as the teachers, we are the role models, examples, and epitome of good values and character to our learners. That is why we need to make sure our action reflects good values and proper decorum. A positive classroom environment can be easily achieved through the establishment of rules and routines at the start of the school year. So aside from promoting a healthy social and emotional learning environment, this also adds structure and organization to the instruction. Rules may be general, such as always do your best and be kind, or specific, such as submit your requirements on time and raise your hand if you want to say something. So in regards to the establishment of classroom routines, it is efficient. That means doing things in the classroom that will avoid wasted time and behavior problems. So for instance, falling in line before going outside, passing of papers in front instead of giving them directly to the teacher, and getting a pass before going to the restroom. In establishing classroom rules and routines, Price and Nelson of 2014 suggested the following guidelines, and we have 7. First, develop and evaluate them with students. Second, keep rules few in numbers so everyone can remember them. Third, post them. Fourth, refer to them often. Fifth, support students with each rule. 6. Acknowledge students for following them, and lastly is to enforce them consistently. Indeed, these 7 suggestions are the key to a healthy and organized routines for classroom regulations and for the students to consistently follow for daily basis. Another thing to consider in planning instruction is materials. Scrinchfield and Salisbury of 2009 define materials as any item, tool, or piece of equipment used to support the lesson before, during, or after instruction. So this may come in the form of visual aids like maps and photos, or it could be media equipment like LCD projector and laptop. It could also be tools like compass and ruler, or relia like artifacts and coins, or print sources like song lyrics and documents, and lastly is manipulatives like puzzles and globe. So in selecting instructional materials then, Sousa of 2001 recommends that teachers should use materials that appeal to the different senses. As much as possible, as teachers, we must remember that the senses of hearing, sight, and touch should be tapped since these contribute the most to learning. Stimulating the different senses create meaningful learning experiences for the students, which can lead to a possible long-term retention of information. But as now, as part of modern society and even in the field of education, infusing of technology and instruction can also aid in increasing student motivation and achievement. So here are a number of practical considerations in the use of instructional materials, and we have 4. First is, materials should be ready to use and located nearby before beginning the instruction. Second, every student should have an equal chance to see or access the materials. Third, teachers should review the materials in order to explain difficult terms to students, anticipate misconceptions, answer queries, and make meaningful connections. And fourth, materials should be age appropriate, culturally responsive, and gender sensitive.
In this topic, there are 6 planning instruction, but Karina and Daryl discussed already the 4 planning instruction. So the remaining 2 planning instruction, which is the students and the teacher, I will be the one to discuss. In learning process, students is the heart of learning process. Why? It's because, as such, they should be given utmost consideration in instructional planning. In order to effectively facilitate learning, teachers should take into account the following in the planning process. First is student readiness. In this scenario, this refers to the ability level of students in relation to a given topic and skills. As you can see above, it mentioned in your screen that students' readiness refers to the ability level of students in relation to a given topic and skills. This can be caused by differences in their learning rate and prior experiences. Some grade 1 students may already know how to make a timeline, while others may still be struggling in understanding chronology. Therefore, it is important for teachers to acknowledge that students do not learn at the same pace and utilize scaffolding for those who struggle in the lesson. Next is, in planning process, student interest. So this is important because this is considered as a powerful motivator to engage students in the learning process. Some students may be interested in superheroes, while others may be fascinated in cartoon characters. Capturing students' interest is important for them to be academically engaged and to perform well in the subject. So this can be done by identifying their interest and incorporating this in the lesson, or by providing engaging activities that will focus their attention on challenging or boring topics. Last is intelligence per reference or learning style. This refers to the different cognitive inclination that a person has for learning. Some students study effectively when music is incorporated in the lesson, while other students learn more when they are shown charts and diagrams. Among the different theories on intelligence, the most famous is Howard Gardner, multiple intelligence, says. This theory suggests that students have at least 9 intelligence. What are the 9 multiple intelligence by Howard Gardner? So the 9 multiple intelligence, this theory suggests that students have at least 9 intelligence for references. First is the verbal or linguistic. Second, logical or mathematical. Third, musical or rhythmic. Next, bodily or kinesthetic. Visual or spatial. Interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalist, and the last is existentialist. So those are the 9 intelligence for references by Howard Gardner. In planning instruction, teachers should vary their approaches and strategies to be able to tap the different intelligence preferences of the students. This is beneficial not only in engaging the learners, but also in ensuring that their different intelligence are harnessed and developed. So let's move on in planning instruction, which is the teacher. So finally, it is important for teachers to take into account their own knowledge for instruction to become more effective. According to Meshra and Kohler 2006, a teacher's knowledge is comprised of 3 components. So what are those 3 components in teacher? So the 3 components in teacher are content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and technological knowledge. So What is content knowledge? So guys, content knowledge refers to a teacher's knowledge about the subject matter that will be taught. This includes knowledge of concepts, theories, ideas, frameworks, and established practices and approaches in the development of such knowledge. In social studies, examples, knowledge of the concepts and frameworks in the social sciences such as anthropology, economics, sociology, and skills in geography and historical thinking. Such knowledge is critical since low content knowledge may contribute to the teaching of the wrong information and the development of misconceptions among students. So, pedagogical knowledge refers to the teacher's knowledge about the process of teaching and learning. So this includes the understanding of principles of learning, classroom management, instructional approaches and strategies, and of course assessment practices. Some teachers may be experts in their discipline but maybe lack the knowledge and skills on how to successfully communicate the information to their students. Thus, it is important that a teacher develops his or her pedagogical knowledge. Why? Because this is greatly contributes to effective teaching and learning. Related resources. Next slide. The intersection of these knowledge components, as shown in your screen, produces an immersion component, that technological pedagogical content knowledge, also known as TPAC. Simply stated, this means the effective learning of the subject with the use of technology. Teachers with a high level of TPAC knows how and when technology can be used to assist instruction and when technology should not be used because it impedes learning. They acknowledge that components can be represented through technology and the pedagogical techniques also be communicated with the use of technology. In social studies, teachers can be demonstrates TPAC through the use of Google Maps to teach location and direction or the employment of web games, and presenting important events in Philippine history. Taking into account the teacher's knowledge is important not only in assessing nuanced states or of current knowledge and skills, but also ensuring the effective delivery of instruction to students. So, of our discussion, hope you will understand. That's all. Thank you.